How much should I charge for this? If you've ever stared at a piece you poured your heart into and struggled to put a price on it, you're not alone. Pricing pottery can feel like a guessing game. You're torn between valuing your time, covering your costs, and not scaring away your potential buyers. In today's video, I'm breaking it all down for you. We'll talk about how to price your pieces sustainably, what costs to actually include, and why underpricing might be doing you more harm than good. Whether you're just starting out or already selling your work, I hope you find some clarity at the end of it. So let's get started. Hi guys, my name is Jaspreet, and in today's video, we are diving into the topic that's both important and a little bit tricky: how to price your pottery. It's one of those questions that doesn't have a one size fits all answer. When I first decided to sell my pottery, I remember diving deep into online resources looking for answers. I read countless articles and forum threads, hoping to find a clear, actionable answer. But most advice either felt too vague or didn't really apply to my journey. In the end, I had to figure out a path that felt right for me, and that's part of what makes this such a personal and layered subject. This video is all about helping you do the same, offering practical tips, things to consider, and a few mindset shifts that might make this process feel a little less overwhelming. Before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. What I'm sharing today isn't the definitive answer. It's simply my perspective, shaped by my own experiences and what's worked for me over time. Take what resonates with you, leave what doesn't, and feel free to adapt it to your own journey. In the beginning, most advice I came across asked to track everything: glazes, tools, studio rent, electricity, water, all of it, and then calculate a price per piece based on how many pots you made. Sounds great in theory, but it didn't really work for me. I wasn't working like a production potter. I was hand building and experimenting, trying different clays, glazes, textures, techniques. Every studio session felt different, so calculating exact cost per piece felt a little bit messy and overwhelming. And then came the question of paying myself. Should I go with minimum wage because I was new? That didn't feel right. I had years of professional experience and knew my time was valuable. But if I priced based on that, the cost of one mug would shoot up and be unaffordable. That didn't feel right either. I was stuck in this loop. If I undercharged, the numbers didn't add up. If I charged too much, it didn't feel realistic. And that's when the whole spiral of self doubt kind of starts creeping in. Should I quit? This is too difficult. Is it the right thing for me? You know the drill. The truth is, the hyper detailed costing method just didn't suit me at the start. It added stress instead of clarity. But as I gained experience, I became more efficient and started understanding my costs better. That's when I found a pricing approach that felt both sustainable and fair to me and my customers. In my opinion, pricing is a function of a few different things, starting from your motivation, your objective. Ask yourself a foundational question: why am I selling my pottery? Your motivation is the compass that guides every other decision. How you price, where you sell, how much time and energy you invest, and even how you define success. There's no right or wrong answers here, just clarity about your intentions. Let's explore the three common motivations. First is you want to build a business. You are in this for the long haul. You want pottery to become a sustainable source of income, maybe part time at first or eventually full time. This is your creative passion and you want to turn it into profession. If this is your motivation, then your mindset has to shift from maker to maker and entrepreneur. That means thinking long term about costs, pricing, and profitability, understanding your audience and creating pieces they actually want to buy, building a brand that reflects your value and artistic voice, developing consistent systems for production, sales, and customer experience, and most importantly, paying yourself, not just covering cost. It can be challenging, but it's also incredibly rewarding. You're building something of your own on your own terms. Second motivation is you want to support your hobby. Maybe you're not looking to quit your job or start a full blown business. You simply love working with clay and you like to make enough money from selling your work to cover your costs so you can keep creating without dipping into your personal savings. This is a totally valid and healthy motivation. In this case, your pricing approach can be more relaxed but still intentional. You'll want to still track your material and firing costs, make sure your prices cover those basic expenses, and keep the joy of craft alive without the pressure of profitability. Think of it as a self sustaining creative practice. You're not trying to scale just to break even, or even have a little extra for a new tool or glaze you've been eyeing, right? The third motivation is you just need to make space. Sometimes it's not about the money at all. You simply love making pottery. You're in the flow, experimenting, learning, and growing. But now your shelves are full and you've run out of space. You are not looking to turn this into a side hustle or even cover costs. You just want to find your pots a home so you can keep creating. And if that's you, pricing doesn't need to be a source of stress. In fact, you don't even have to sell your work if you don't want to. You can gift your pieces to friends, family, neighbors. You can donate to local charities, schools, or community groups. You can host a pay what you can sale or sell at nominal prices just to keep your studio flowing. The key here is freedom. You're doing it purely for the love of the craft, and any money earned is just a bonus. Now, why does your motivation matter? When you're clear on your motivation, everything else becomes easier. You're not comparing your pricing to someone with a totally different goal. You're able to set realistic expectations for yourself. You can make decisions that feel right for where you are right now in your pottery journey. And remember, your motivation can evolve. You might start as a hobbyist and later want to turn it into a business, or you might scale back after a busy season and return to making for joy. Give yourself permission to shift paths as your life and goals change. Another important factor to consider when thinking about pricing is the kind of work you create. Pottery is a broad field, and what you make, whether it's functional, decorative, sculptural, or abstract, plays a huge role in how customers perceive its value and how you should price it. Let's break it down. Functional pottery. These are everyday items people use: mugs, bowls, plates, vases, planters, teapots, etc. Functional pottery has to be more than just look good. It needs to work well. It should be durable, comfortable to use, food safe, and in some cases, dishwasher and microwave safe too. So, what are the pricing considerations for functional pottery? Customers tend to compare your functional pottery to similar items from stores, both handmade and mass produced. I know it's not fair, but it is true. Because they plan to use it regularly, they may have practical expectations like comfort, size, finish, stackability, weight, etc. Pricing for functional wear needs to balance affordability with quality. If your mug costs $60, the customer is going to ask why. So your craftsmanship, glaze work, uniqueness need to clearly justify the higher price. Also, there's often a ceiling to how much people are willing to pay for everyday objects, unless they are collectors or connoisseurs. Here's a little tip for you. If you're making functional wear, one of the best things you can do in the early stages is to use your own work at home. This gives you invaluable insights. Do your plates scratch the tables? Do your mugs leak or feel awkward to hold? Is the handle comfortable? Can your pieces stack or store easily? Are they too heavy when filled with food or liquid? These real world observations help you refine your design and justify your pricing. Customers paying a premium for handmade expect functionality, not just beauty. Even subtle improvements like a better shaped handle or smoother glaze at the rim can enhance value and justify higher pricing. Let's now talk about sculptural decorative pottery. This includes pieces that are more about artistic expression and visual appeal than practical use. Think wall pieces, abstract forms, decorative vases, figurines, or other kind of conceptual work. Now, what are the pricing considerations for sculptural work? These pieces are often treated more like art than pottery. The pricing here can be more flexible and in some cases significantly high because they aren't being compared to items in a home goods store but to art in a gallery. Customers buying decorative pottery are usually drawn to its uniqueness, the story behind it, and the emotion or meaning it evokes, not just the materials or the time it took to make. There's also more room for subjectivity. One person might see a small sculpture and feel it's worth 5,000, while another might not get it at all. Here's a small tip. For decorative or sculptural work, focus on storytelling, presentation, and building an emotional connection with your audience. Your background, creative process, and inspiration can add tremendous value here. I have a little story to share here. One of the stores that stocks my work is located on a popular upscale shopping street. There have been several occasions when the staff messaged me while a customer was in the store asking about the inspiration or story behind a specific piece. Now, I want to clarify that most of my work is functional pottery, and these questions are often about smaller items and not even the higher ticket pieces worth hundreds. At first, I was unsure how to respond. I remember one instance in particular. The staff messaged me while the customer was holding a little platter with texture ruffled edges glazed in a soft cerulean blue. They said the customer was waiting to hear more about it, the inspiration behind it. I'm sure I came up with something thoughtful on the spot, and whatever I said must have resonated because the piece sold, as did others that followed. The takeaway here is that even functional pieces, when they feature unique textures, forms, or glazes, and are presented thoughtfully, can carry a sense of meaning or story for the viewer. how a piece is displayed can really elevate it beyond just function. I'm going to add a few images here so you can see how the pieces were displayed. The third factor that determines your pricing: how long have you been doing this and what's your skill level? Once you've clarified your motivation and decided that you do want to sell your work, whether to support your hobby or build a business, it's time to take a step back and look at your pottery with fresh eyes. The next step is all about self awareness and objectivity. Ask yourself, how long have I been working with clay? How consistently have I practiced? What techniques have I mastered? What areas are still learning and experimenting with? This isn't about putting yourself down or inflating your abilities. It's about being honest with where you are in your journey so you can price your work in a way that feels fair to both you and your customers. Now, why does experience matter? Just like any other craft, pottery takes time, patience, and repetition to develop skills and finesse. A beginner potter's mug might be charming and full of character, but it likely won't have the same finish or consistency as the work of someone who's been throwing pots for 5 to 10 years. And that's okay. Everyone starts somewhere, but recognizing your current state helps you set prices that reflect your craftsmanship. They help you manage customer expectations and also help you avoid undercharging or overpricing. Also, it gives you a chance to continue growing without the pressure of trying to look more advanced than you are. Try to look at your work as a customer would. This part can be really hard, especially because you're emotionally attached to a work. Every piece has a story behind it. But your customer doesn't see that. They see the finished piece, so try this. Imagine you are at a local market or scrolling through an online shop. You come across a mug just like the ones you make. You like the design, the glaze is nice, and the form is solid. How much would you be willing to pay for it? Would you hesitate at $30? Would you feel $15 is a steal? Would $50 feel too high? This kind of pricing gut check helps you see your work not just as a maker, but also as a buyer. The fourth key factor in pricing is where do you intend to sell? One of the most important but often overlooked factors in pricing your pottery is where you intend to sell. Your sales channel impacts not just the price you can charge, but also your customers' experience, your overhead costs, and the overall experience people have with your brand. Whether you're selling online or at local markets or through galleries or in retail stores, each of these comes with its own dynamics and should influence how you set your prices. Let's look at the two main categories: online versus in person. In person could be markets and physical stores. Now, selling online. Selling online would classify as selling through your website, Etsy, Instagram, social media, whatever online channels that you have. Selling online opens up your work to a broader audience. Anyone from anywhere can discover and purchase your pottery. But it also comes with its own sets of challenges and costs. What are the costs to consider? First of all, website domain fees or the platform fees. Like Etsy charges a listing fee, Shopify has a monthly platform fee. Then there are payment processor fees like Stripe or PayPal. Photography, branding, and product descriptions, they take time or money to create. Then there are shipping materials, your boxes, tape, fragile stickers, etc. Also, the time spent packing, labeling, and responding to customer queries. How does this impact your pricing? Online pricing needs to cover not only your material and labor costs, but also the cost of running and maintaining an online presence. Second is selling in person. This could be markets, craft fairs, galleries, or retail stores. Selling in person allows customers to touch, feel, and connect with your work in real time, which often increases the perceived value. They are more likely to appreciate the textures, the glaze variations, and the weight of a well made piece when they experience it firsthand. What are the costs to consider? Your booth or stall fees or commissions. Now, galleries and retail outlets often take 30 to 50%. Transportation and setup time, cost of display materials, shelves, signs, props, etc. Wear and tear on your pieces from handling, that does happen, and time spent away from the studio. How does it impact your pricing? If you're selling through a retail store or gallery, they will take a commission, often a significant one. Your pricing must account for that, or you'll risk making no profit. If a gallery takes 40% commission and you want to make $30 from a mug, the gallery must sell it for $50. This means your base prices must be high enough to account for the cut others will take without pricing yourself out of the market. It is a fine balancing act. If you're selling at markets or pop ups, you may still need to include stall fees, setup time in your pricing calculation. Even though there's no shipping cost involved, the cost of presence, which is your time, travel, display setup, etc., still counts and should be reflected in your pricing. A quick note, if you are selling in multiple places, try to keep your prices consistent. For example, if a customer sees your mug listed for $45 on your website and $30 at the local market, it could create confusion or mistrust. Instead of underpricing in person, think of how to add more value to the online experience. It could be free shipping or a thank you gift, just to justify the price difference. In short, where you sell isn't just a logical decision, it is a strategic pricing factor. Each selling channel comes with its own set of costs, expectations, and opportunities, and understanding those will help you price your work fairly and sustainably, avoid undercutting yourself, and build trust with your audience across platforms. And finally, the most important question: who is your ideal customer? No matter how beautiful your work is or how carefully you calculate your costs, your pricing won't land unless it aligns with the person you're trying to sell to. This is where many potters and creatives in general struggle. Not because their work isn't good enough, but because they haven't clearly defined who they are making it for. Understanding your ideal customer is the foundation of not just pricing strategy, but your entire business. Now, who is your ideal customer? Your ideal customer isn't everyone. They are a very specific group of people who connect with your aesthetic. They appreciate the time, care, and artistry that goes into handmade work. They can afford what you're offering and are willing to pay for it. They feel excited to support small creative businesses. Start by imagining them as a real person. How old are they? What do they do for a living? What kind of home do they live in? Do they value sustainability, minimalism, luxury, playfulness? Where do they shop? Online or in person? Do they already buy handmade goods? From where? Why do they choose handmade over mass produced? For example, maybe your ideal customer is a 40 something professional woman who likes to host beautiful dinner parties and values artisanal home decor. Or maybe it's a 30-year-old design lover who collects sculptured objects for modern apartments. The more specific you are, the easier it becomes to speak directly to them through your pricing, your photographs, your captions, your stories, and your entire brand. When you understand what your ideal customer values, you can align your pricing with that value. A mug at that point isn't just a mug, it's a piece of someone's morning ritual. A bowl isn't just a bowl, it's a centerpiece of a gathering of loved ones. Now, the next question is, can you reach them through the channels you've chosen? Now that you know who they ask yourself, are they hanging out on Instagram, Pinterest, or YouTube? Do they attend local artisan markets, studio tours, or pop ups? Are they browsing Etsy for one of a kind gifts? Do they shop at high end boutiques or curated stores? Remember, it's not just about where you want to sell, it's about where they are already looking. Now, the question is where to begin with actually pricing your pottery. There are many factors to consider: your material costs, labor, market, competition, and more. But it's possible to break down the process into manageable steps that give you clarity and confidence. And the idea here is to get a ballpark, an average, a range. Don't get too obsessed with accounting for every second or every ounce of clay. Here's where you can start. First is to add up all your basic costs. Start with any one form that you make. I'm going to take the example of a medium-sized platter and explain the process of pricing this platter. Now, determining the cost of one piece is a little bit tricky. So we will determine the approximate cost of a batch, and in this case, a batch of platter. So what are the basic costs to consider? Let's start with clay. For example, a 20-pound bag of clay costs about $30. And assuming I can make 10 medium-sized platters from this bag. How do I know I can get 10 platters from this clay bag? Simply weigh the amount of clay needed to make one platter and divide that by the weight of the clay bag. For instance, if you need 2 pounds of clay to make one platter, a 20-pound bag will give you 10 platters. So the cost of clay per platter would be around $3. Next is glazes. Add up the cost of each glaze you're using. Consider the quantity and how much you use per piece, just an approximate amount. For example, if I use soft white as the base glaze with textured mulberry and soft aqua as accents, to glaze these 10 platters, I'll need at least 2 pints of soft white and half pint each of textured mulberry and soft aqua. That is 3 pints of glaze. Now each pint of glaze costs about $30 for me, so that's $90. So the glaze cost per platter is $9. Next cost is firing. Include the cost of running your kiln, factoring in electricity or gas use per firing. Firing my own small kiln for 2 firings, bisque and glaze, would be about $30. So the firing cost per platter is $3. Now, if you use a studio for firing, then you know how much it costs to fire a small kiln full of these 10 platters. For me in Singapore, it would come to around $200 for the 2 firings. So the firing cost per platter would be $20. Next, we account the studio space. If you're paying rent for your studio, include that cost. Now, this is tricky for me since I make a lot more than 10 platters in a month. So let's assume I can make 10 platters in one day and I spend 10 days a month just making these platters and another 10 days doing the rest of the process, just cleaning, trimming, drying, glazing, firing, the rest of it. So the complete process of creating these 100 platters, which is 10 into 10, takes me 20 full days. Assuming my studio rent is 2500, to calculate my cost per platter, I'll calculate the approximate rental for 20 days and divide that by 100. This gives me approximately $17. It's actually 16.6. Now, if you have a shared or community studio, assuming with a monthly membership of $500, and let's assume that you have 3 studio days per week, which is about 12 studio days per month. You can calculate the number of platters you make end to end in 12 studio days. If we assume the same making rate as above, 6 full making days and 6 full days for the rest of the process, you can make up to 60 platters in 1 month. The cost per platter will be 500 divided by 60, and that's about $8 approximately. Even if you're working from home, factor in some portion of your home utilities, electricity, heating, etc. Apart from this, I add another $2 as miscellaneous for tools and other things that I may have used during the process. If you have any other things that you use, please add that to the cost. Let's now look at the cost of making a platter based on the calculations above. Now, when using your own studio and kiln, the cost comes to about $34. And when using hired studio and kiln, it comes to about $42. Now, how do you price your platter? When selling through your own website and studio, I just double it. So 34 into 2 gives me 68. And if my cost is 42, it's 42 into 2, which gives me $84. Now, when I'm selling through a gallery or a retailer, and let's assume that I have to pay a commission of 40%, I am going to add the additional 40% to the doubled cost. So that will be $68 multiplied by the 40% commission, which will give me $95. And similarly, for the second cost that I've calculated, which is $84, I'm going to multiply that by 40% commission, 1.4, and that gives me approximately $117, $118. As you'll notice, I haven't added labor costs separately here. When I double the cost, I'm accounting for my time and effort within that markup. Honestly, I still struggle with putting a fixed value on my time, and this approach feels a little bit more manageable for me. And you just have to repeat the same batch pricing process for all the different forms you make. It is also a good idea to check out your peers. Take a look at what other artists are charging for similar prices to get an idea of where your prices might fall in the market. Platforms like Etsy are a great place to do this. A few things to keep in mind when checking others' prices are, first of all, location. Prices vary greatly depending on where the artist is based. Artists in larger cities or high cost living areas may charge more to cover their higher expenses. Second is skill level. Don't forget that experienced artists often charge more for their work due to the level of craftsmanship and expertise. Their work is often valued more because they have built a reputation over time. Third is again the type of work. Consider whether the pottery is functional or decorative and how that may impact the price. Highly detailed or unique work might command a higher price. Next thing to consider is your audience and marketing. Some artists may charge more because they've built an engaged following. If they have a loyal customer base that trusts them, they can afford to charge premium prices. And the last thing is obviously the sales channel. The way the artist sells their work, whether online, in person, at high end galleries, or through established retailers, can impact the price point. Remember, this isn't about copying somebody else's price point, it's just to get a sense of the general pricing rate for similar work. Every artist situation is different, and your prices should reflect your cost, time, and skill level. Now, use all this information to get a ballpark figure. Once you've added up your costs and checked out the competition, you should have a good starting point for your price. This process is about finding a ballpark figure or a price range that feels reasonable given the quality of your work, your costs, and the market. It's okay if your pricing isn't perfect at first. The goal is to get into the right ballpark
so you can start selling and then adjust as you gather more feedback and experience.
A few additional tips to add value to your work. As a ceramic artist, it's not just about the quality of the work itself, it's also about how to present, package, and display your creations. How you elevate the experience of buying your pottery can make a significant difference in how much people are willing to pay for it. Here's how you can add value to your work and enhance its perceived worth. First, presentation. Presentation is key. How you present your work affects its value. The way you present your pottery can dramatically impact how much people are willing to pay for it. The work is beautiful, but if it's not presented in a way that reflects its value, it can be difficult to convince customers to pay what you believe it's worth. For online sales, make sure your work is showcased in a clean, professional, aesthetic way. Whether it's through photos or videos, how you show your pottery influences the first impression people get. Well lit images, clear backgrounds, and styled photos that highlight the beauty and craftsmanship of each piece are essential. Bad or poorly lit photos can drastically lower your work's perceived value. Great photography isn't just about making your work look good, it's about giving potential buyers confidence in what they are purchasing. The better your images, the higher chances of making a sale at a higher price point. For in person sales, consider the setup of your booth or display table. A well organized, attractive display gives the impression that your work is high end and carefully curated. Even the environment where you're selling matters. Displaying your work in a high traffic, well curated space or a boutique store will elevate its perceived value compared to a bargain market. When you present your work with care and attention, it signals to customers that your pieces are valuable and worth investing in. Next tip is packaging. Packaging isn't just about protecting your pottery, it's also about enhancing the customer's experience. A piece of pottery wrapped in a beautiful, well designed box or pouch feels a lot more luxurious than one thrown in a plain cardboard box or a craft paper bag. For example, these flower tea light holders, when packed in a box with a clear window and paired with a tea light, fly off the shelves. People love buying them, not just as festive gifting, but also as handy backup gifts to keep at home for those last minute occasions. Another tip is to sell in sets or bundles. Selling your pottery in sets or bundles can also increase its value and encourage people to purchase more at once. Bundles can help you move multiple pieces at once, and it's a great way to increase the overall sale value per customer. Plus, buyers may feel they're getting a better deal, which could encourage them to spend more than they originally intended. I know we've covered a lot in this video, but this is something I wanted to talk about for a long time because it's one of the most common questions I get asked. To make things easier for you, I've put together a PDF guide that outlines everything we talked about, plus a handy worksheet to help you calculate your pricing. You'll find the link in the description. It's free to download for the next 7 days, and after that, it will be available for a small fee. So be sure to grab it while it's free. I hope this helped bring some clarity to the tricky world of pricing your pottery. Remember, it's a journey and your approach will evolve as you grow. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow maker. And let me know in the comments what's been the hardest part of pricing your work. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.